Thank you. I congratulate, first of all, the Honourable Member for Twickenham on securing the really important debate today, and I know that she's been working particularly hard to highlight the concerns of some of her constituents regarding SEND provision and funding. And I want to put on record that I do share her concerns, and I want to stress that this government is taking action and will continue to take action. Our ambition is for every child, no matter what challenges they face, to have access to a world-class education system that sets them up for life, to enable them to reach their full potential. And of course, we do need to ensure that this is what is actually happening across the entirety of the UK. The issue of funding has been raised by several members today, and yes, it is extremely important. And it is part of our commitment to level up across the country. But I do also want to stress that the issue is so much more than just funding, and this was something that was touched on by the Honourable Member for Colston and Wallington. We should accept that there are large amounts of money in the SEND system, but it is important that that money is spent efficiently and effectively to really raise the outcomes of these children and to ensure that it is a child-focused system. I do also want to note that we do recognise the value that mainstream education plays in providing a wonderful education for children with specific challenges, and that was something referenced by the Honourable Member for Totnes today. So we are undertaking a cross-government review of our SEND provision, and we must ensure that every penny we spend helps to achieve better outcomes, so that parents and teachers have the confidence in the system to deliver for these children. The review is looking at how the SEND system has evolved since the major reforms that were introduced in 2014 and is considering how the system can be made to work better for all families, ensuring that the quality of provision and the support available to children and young people is sustainable in the future, whilst also looking at the supply and delivery of support at the moment. And the supply was something that the Honourable Member for Croydon North particularly touched on, in addition to the Honourable Member for Barnsley East. And this is a particular concern both of myself and the government. We want to ensure that support in different local areas is consistent, joined up across healthcare and education services, and that high-quality support is available across the country. We must make sure that all the funds that are spent on an efficient and effective way to make sure that children's needs are adequately catered for. The Honourable Member for Chichester mentioned that the EHCP process is too burdensome and long, and all of the struggles that people can have throughout that, and this will form part of the review. The SEND review is looking at how the future system for supporting children and young people should operate, and later this year we are planning to start a review for the formula that calculates funding allocations for individual local authorities. The Honourable Member for Twickenham called for a strategy, but I think it's really important that we actually hear what the review has to say before we make our long-term plans, because it must be evidence-based. It must be focused on delivering for these children and young people. And I recognise that this is not a sufficient answer for those areas that are struggling now to provide the support that parents expect and their children need. But we are consulting on changes that would reduce the adverse impacts of carrying forward cumulative deficits, which was something in particular that the Honourable Member for Twickenham raised, and we will be responding to the consultation very shortly. We recognise the urgency of this and have been developing a response in conjunction with the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Treasury, and I can assure the Honourable Member that we will be publishing this shortly, and I am more than happy to meet with her in the forthcoming days, in fact. Yes.
Jim Shannon. So one of the very delicate and important issues is those with complex health needs. And there's not just one single health need, there's maybe 3 or 4, and that is then compacts upon the education. Is the Minister suggesting, or is she prepared to set some funding and resources aside to deal with those with complex health needs that are educational as well?
Thank the Honourable Member for his intervention. So the review is encompassing the education as ECHPs, and it is going to look at exactly the challenges in the system, including the point that was raised by the Honourable Member for Cheltenham, who said that we should look at the threshold. This is something that we will be looking at, and it will address whether we are giving enough support for those children that have complex and compounded problems. And we will also be looking at the £6,000 contribution that mainstream schools have to input, and this was an issue that was raised by a number of members today, and I know from my own constituency that this can be a challenge on our school provision. So the SEND review is looking at how future systems for supporting children and young people should operate, but it is also important to recognise that it is not a sufficient answer for those areas that are struggling now, as I've pointed out. So I am more than happy to meet with any honourable member that has a challenge locally and go through this with them. Yeah.
I represent Barnsley, and it's projected in 2020-2021 financial year it will have a high needs funding deficit of nearly £6 million, and that is taking into account of the extra money the government's given. So does the Minister accept there simply isn't enough money in the system? It's all very well to talk about all the other issues, they're important, but the money is absolutely critical.
I thank the honourable member. And the deficit issue, as I've just said, we are looking at, and I'm more than happy to meet with her in particular for her local issue. I do think it is important to spell out on the funding in particular the action that we have already taken. So the action is that we have given the largest cash boost in a decade to increase school funding by £2.6 billion in 2020 to 21, followed by an increase of £4.8 billion and £7.1 billion in 2021 to 22 and 22 to 23, respectively. The increase next year includes £780 million of additional funding for those with the most complex SEND. This represents an increase of 12% compared to this year. So whilst the challenges are still stark and there are a number of problems within the system, it would be unfair to say that this government have not invested in this area or in education. Every local authority, in fact, will see an increase in high needs funding of at least 8% per head. This figure is a remarkable figure. So the question isn't just about funding. As I said before, it is also about where that money is going and ensuring that that money is best placed to make sure that these children have the very best outcomes that they possibly can. And also,
grateful to the Minister for giving way. I won't keep her very long. I just want to make sure that as we conduct this review and the additional funding is going in, that we're not going to let local authorities off the hook to fulfil their statutory obligations. As the example I gave from the London Borough of Sutton, there are occasions where the council just aren't putting in the leadership that is required, and I hope that she can give me that assurance.
Yes, indeed. Every local authority does have statutory obligations, and as it says on the tin, they should be doing that, in fact. And it was raised by a number of members today that these children are some of the most vulnerable in our society and should be at the paramount top of our agenda when we are setting policy and ensuring that policy is actually delivered on the ground. So, just to touch on the point that I do want to make the case for, that it isn't the fact that this is a problem up and down the country, that the system is failing everywhere, because it certainly isn't. There are a multitude of examples of excellent service for children with SEND, and some of those were raised by the Honourable Member for Chichester in relation to her local college, and I'd be delighted to come and visit and see the work that they are doing. And so I do want to also praise the excellent staff up and down the country and professionals that work in this field, that work tirelessly, and I know that that was also done by a number of members. But I think by focusing on the negatives, we can sometimes take away from the tremendous work that they do. I will.
Wayne, I absolutely share that sentiment. But before we move away from what she was saying about the new consultation that she will be doing on this issue, I wonder if she might answer my question about where is the consultation on children not in school? Because clearly, shouldn't we be seeing the results of that before we launch a new consultation that might in fact be linked?
I thank the Honourable Member for her contribution, indeed. But the one review, so the SEND review, will be published within the first quarter of this year. So we will then be able to make a strategy and move forward with an evidence base. And the other consultation that she is on about is not actually the same as this one. This one is completely targeted on SEND and the children that we're talking about today, and will inform our policy as we move forward. And now, it was mentioned by the Honourable Member for Croydon North of the importance of working across government, and that was also raised by a number of colleagues today, and I just want to reassure everybody that this is an area that doesn't just fit within the Department for Education. In fact, I have regular meetings with my fellow counterparts, and in addition, this is a cross-government review that does take into account that very fact. I will. Briefly, quickly.
I'll be very, very brief. The Minister talked about the importance of valuing the staff and all the positive and excellent professional work they do in supporting children, and I think everybody in the Chamber would agree with that. But could I draw the Minister's attention to one way of valuing public sector workers is how they're paid? And I would say to the Minister that in Scotland a teacher starts on a starting salary of £32,034, and in England a teacher has a starting salary of £24,373. So I would wonder if she thinks that perhaps valuing staff might be reflected in perhaps a better pay rise for teachers in England.
Thank the Honourable Member for her contribution, and she will note that that was actually a key part of the Conservative Party manifesto, which allowed us to gain our majority government. But now, just in conclusion, I want to say that I am enormously grateful for the contributions today. I'm more than happy to answer any questions separately on particular local issues. In relation to the Honourable Member for Croydon's comment about the supply, again, that is something I do want to reassure him that we are taking very seriously as part of the review. And I'm enormously grateful for the support that the Honourable Member has given the agenda today in raising its profile and also showing the interest level across all of the country in this important topic. The review of SEND is crucial. It's crucial for making sure that we do deliver the outcomes that these children really do deserve. And it demonstrates just how serious this government is taking this issue across the government, not just in the Department for Education. So I want to reassure all honourable members that despite claims today, no children shall be abandoned on this government's watch.